Hello, bozos, and welcome to the Graystar2426 channel. We are back with another Top 10 video. This is going to be the second one. As you all know from the last Top 10 video, I've been cataloging all of my SiIvagunner rips to see which ones I like the most in a bunch of different categories. Last time was the 2023 favorites. Now we're on to the 2022 favorites, going back in time here. So let me just do another brief overview on how the list will work. So these are all sorted by my own personal taste, nothing like objectionably measurable. However, there's some factors I have that go into it. These are like soft factors, not like with a point system or anything. It's just how I feel. But these factors are like the joke of the rip, the games or music that the rip uses as a base for it, whether I would listen to the rip unironically or not, the amount of effort that was put into the rip, the impact the rip has on me personally as well could be a factor, and there's a bunch of other, smaller gut feelings that go into this list. I will say there's going to be 3 honorable mentions at the start, and another factor is that this is main channel only. We're going to do a fan channels video soon, I promise, but this is just going to be the main SiIvagunner channel proper. And with that, let us get started with the honorable mentions. So, the first honorable mention of the night is going to be Forest Area PAL version from Kirby's Return to Dreamland. So the joke of this rip is that it was part of the Kirby and the Forgotten Land event that was occurring on the day of the release of the Kirby game on March 25th of that year. So the event had a sort of theme where it took the Caretakers Everywhere at the End of Time album, the one about, mental degradation, Alzheimer's, that sort of thing, but it also combined it with that similar vibe of something being old and forgotten, and it applied it to a bunch of different Kirby rips in order to build up hype for the release of the game. Now, this rip specifically does not reference the Caretaker album overtly. Instead, it sort of captures the vibes of the, desolation, loneliness of the event, where it's kind of hard to describe, but I would give it a Dead Mall vibe. Like, what I mean by that is when I hear this song, I picture like a desolate, abandoned mall with like half-broken, flickering LED lights, and this song would be playing out of like crackling, shitty 90s mall speakers or whatever. You could throw around liminal spaces all you want and all those buzzwords, but that's kind of what comes to mind when I think of this rip. It's a more subdued rip overall. Come to think of it, this actually kind of reminds me of the Shiver Star Mall in Kirby 64, if you know what I'm talking about. But aside from that, it's a more subdued rip overall, but it actually gave me a bit of a sad, nostalgic feeling when I came across this rip as it comes up, late at night when I'm playing a game or something, listening to my playlist, and then I just, sit back with this playing in my ears. It does have a little bit of a feeling for, silly SiIvagunner rip, but let's keep going. Now, our second honorable mention is going to be Meta Knight Defeated NTSC version from Kirby Superstar. So this one has the joke of a melody swap between the listed track and the song One More Minute by Weird Al Yankovic. It is rare that I get to hear a Weird Al rip, so it is very appreciated. I will say this rip does match the sort of down in the dumps vibe that One More Minute has, because, yeah, I bet Meta Knight would kind of feel pissed when Kirby, blows up the halberd for the umpteenth time. Even one of the commenters referenced it. Here, I'll show that comment there as well. The only other thing I'll mention about this rip is that I love that it has the big exhale sound effect from this part in the One More Minute song. Till I die. And then they have it being this little sound effect from Kirby Superstar. I forgot which one, but I'll play that here too. And again, it's these little touches that I enjoy with a rip. Now we're getting on to the third honorable mention. That's going to be Fires of Hokai from Toho 12 Undefined Fantastic Object. So the joke for this rip is Space Jam, plain and simple. This rip was actually part of the Space Jam Charity Slam event from the month of January of 2022. The rip follows that sort of Space Jam rip standard of having a purposefully bad thumbnail that ruins the joke beforehand, but hey, it's tradition. If it didn't have that spoiler in the thumbnail, it could have had the chance to have this really good slow build-up in the actual track itself to the reveal of the joke, where, like, as soon as I would hear the first slam, and with all the reverb, I would go, come on, all that for a Space Jam rip, you know? Like, yeah, it sucks that they didn't go through with that, but you gotta uphold tradition. Either way, back to the thumbnail itself, they had a little few touches there, like they secretly replaced the face of Byakurin from the Toho game in her silhouette with Charles Barkley, where you can see it's the outline of that one image they use for all the thumbnails of him. And they also replaced the text in the actual cover that Zune made with, you know, all this sort of Space Jam basketball lingo, and then the Warner Brothers logo, things like that. The standard stuff you'd see with the Space Jam rip. I will say the pitch shifting of the rip in the background of the rip itself is good. Otherwise, it's a pretty simple rip. Shout out to Simple Rips. But it doesn't need to be anything special. I will also say the lower sort of pitches of the Space Jam vocals have a pretty good contrast to the higher notes of the actual notes themselves in Fires of Hokai. So it really does kind of provide a good contrast for what is ultimately a shitpost Space Jam rip. Alrighty, now we are on to the actual top 10 proper. And starting off with number 10, we have Circus Lil Nas Mix from Five Nights at Freddy's. Of course, there's a pretty good title joke in there that spoils it, but only kind of spoils it, because as you know, the Circus rips are SiIvagunner's sort of wild card, where you can have it be Circus and cut it off and have it completely replaced with whatever you want. And the other side of the joke with this rip is We Are Number One. And it's, of course, matched with Industry Baby by Lil Nas X. And I've actually mentioned before how peak the Wano instrumentation is. And having all of that underneath the Industry Baby vocals gives it almost like a bouncing sort of rhythm. Of course, it, you know, makes it very, very silly, but hey, it's good for a Siva rip to be silly. And it really kind of pushes the rip along. I will mention as well, there's also little vocal bits from We Are Number One. Not a lot, but little snippets here and there that also add to it and contribute to the, I guess, flow of the rip. So for what is a Circus rip, it's still pretty decent quality. Of course, a lot of that given to the strength of We Are Number One's instruments. Now we're going to head on to number 9. This is Traveler's Brittle Hollow from Outer Wilds. Now, first off, Outer Wilds is an amazing game. I unfortunately watched a playthrough of it instead of playing it for myself, and it's one of those games you only get to play at once. So please, if you haven't, please play Outer Wilds. It is a really, really good experience, and it's not just a walking simulator. It has, you know, flying into the sun in spaceships, all that good stuff. But anyways, the actual joke of this rip is the song Undertale from, well, Undertale, and it uses the Outer Wilds instruments in a point near the climax of the game. Of course, I'm not going to spoil anything about it, but it's, you know, a very, like, sort of grassroots campfire sort of mix of instruments together, and of course that's what the visual of the rip is anyways. But aside from that, the rip mainly just reminds me of the amazing ending to Outer Wilds, so I can't recommend how much you should play this game enough. But other than that, it's very simple, not exactly a melody swap, I mean, I guess you could say it is, but whatever it is, it's well executed, and it adds each sort of instrument layer by layer to build up to this whole, like, soft crescendo with everything coming together, again, just like in the game. So it's very faithful to Outer Wilds, and of course Undertale has good music, it's Toby Fox, so it's very well put together, meshes pretty well, and it's one of those where if you'd never played either game or heard any of the music from either game, it would sound pretty natural. So I do like that rip a ton, especially with how rare Outer Wilds rips are. Now we are on to rip number 8 with Now's Your Chance to Be a Alpha Mix from Deltarune. Now, the game itself is Deltarune, and you gotta reference Spamton, all that sort of goodness, but the actual joke itself is Gangnam Style by Psy. So, definitely not the first time I've heard a Gangnam Style rip, nor will it be the last. The main strength of this rip is the actual vocal editing that's done to Psy, especially with the Now's Your Chance to Be a Big Star, you know, portion of the rip with the vocals. I'll play a sample of that. I will also mention that, the various sounds Psy makes, like the A's and the whoops and, all those other sound bites he makes are also chopped in there as parts of the instrumental, and they add to, the silliness of the rip. Never a bad thing for a silly rip. I've said it before, but overall it's just a fun rip, I'll say. Now we're going on to number 7. This is Poshly Heights from Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. So the joke of this rip is that it is a YTPMV style rip. It references a bunch of sources, including like Germa, Wine Up, Dame Tu Cosita, and tons of other smaller sources. It's a big YTPMV rip. Now, when I say big, it is kind of a short rip overall, so not that big. It's less than 2 minutes long, and it does have a loop in the middle, so it's not a huge rip in terms of the amount of content, but the sources that are there are edited well, especially the part with the guy singing, Gary, or whatever it is. It's from that clip where the guy's like, SpongeBob, Patrick, the Blink-182 meme. You probably heard of it, and if not, I sound like a lunatic, but when don't I sound like a lunatic? So, either way, there's just other parts where it's, oh, I recognize that source, and then, of course, they're used well together. The only other thing I'll mention is I like the Ben rants clip at the end, and then all of that, the entire point of that clip introduced right at the end is just to make a funny 7 joke right at the end of the rip. Yeah, the guy's just like, when I was a kid, 7.
Welcome back to Ben Rants, and when I was a kid, 7.
And of course the audience laughs at the funny 7, so why not? At this point, we move on to number 6, that is Crowned from Kirby's Return to Dreamland. So the joke of this rip is that it is also a YTPMV style rip. This time it doesn't have visuals, but it uses even more sources than the last one. And some of these sources that stand out to me the most are Scatman's World, Ghost Ride the Whip, the Michael Rosen rap, Baby Got Book, Goomba Got Back, and Doin' Your Mom, among countless others. I do appreciate that it uses smaller vocal clips to mimic some of the instrumentals, while some of the larger sources are on top of that. That's a plus for the rip. I also like that the sources are sometimes mixed in with each other, where they take turns with some of the sources going back and forth, rather than just having it one after the other, in terms of how the sources are presented in the YTPMV. Again, here I am being overly analytical for a YTPMV, but whatever. Hey, this is what the video's for, right? Alright, we are now on to number 5. That is Circus Discount Version from Five Nights at Freddy's. Oh boy, we got another circus rip, so let's spin the wheel. What's the joke gonna be this time? This time, the only source is H.H. Greg's Christmas in July commercial. You know me, I love my H.H. Gregg rips, but there's no other source. Instead, the joke is what they do to it. They take that commercial and they turn it into a sea shanty. I never in my life would have thought that the guy voicing the little HH advertising character would do a sea shanty, but here we are. So it's more of a almost YTPMV style cover of the sea shanty Wellerman. Look, I don't really like Wellerman because it's usually, baby's first sea shanty. Please listen to anything other than Wellerman. Don't listen to just that one song and say, oh, I like sea shanty. Shut up. No, you don't. But that little mini rant aside, this rip works really well having Wellerman as the melody. It is recognizable enough where most people will get the joke. The main reason it works is because of the actual amazing harmonization. Like, I can't describe it. Listen to this harmonization on the main part of the chorus of this rip. Listen.
Sale, yeah, Christmas in July, Panasonic Blu-ray 99, save on everything at Christmas in July at HHH Greg.
That is such beautiful vocal harmonization coming from H.H. Gregg of all sources. Some other highlights of this rip are the descending part that goes like H.H.H.H. Gregg right before the chorus. Here's a little clip of that.
Everything's on sale through Christmas, HHH Greg.
I also appreciate that they had HH knocking on the glass, and that's like the only sort of form of keeping time in the rip. It's such a simple little bit of instrumentation, but it's funny with how sparse the rip is, where each little snippet from the commercial stands out so much. So there we go. Now I've seen an H.H. Gregg sea shanty. I think I've seen everything. Moving right along, we are at number 4, which is Reading the Letter, Bowser's Seizures Palace Hotel from Hotel Mario. Try reading that 10 times fast. Looking at the length of the rip, you can probably guess what the joke's gonna be. And yeah, it's One Winged Angel from Final Fantasy VII. We got another One Winged Angel rip, everyone. This is a classic example of some extreme pitch shifting and vocal editing. It contorts all these Hotel Mario sound bites into the iconic Sephiroth song. And of course, the standout moment for this is the Latin lyrics that are in One Winged Angel, but instead, they're by Mario. So listen to this beautiful segment here. Another little touch that stood out to me from this rip is that they incorporated a portion of the actual Hotel Mario intro music, you know, the dun 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 dun, whatever. But they put that into the part of the melody of One Winged Angel as well. So it's these little details that I notice, because with how long of a rip these One Winged Angel rips tend to be, you end up having a lot of space where you can notice those little details there. And now that we've finished number 4, that will naturally lead us into the top 3. And here we are at the top 3, not wasting any time. Number 3 is going to be Dino Piranha Beta Mix from Super Mario Galaxy. The joke of this rip is Big Time Rush by Big Time Rush, and they are actually returning after making an appearance in my 2023 top 10 videos, so congratulations to Big Time Rush here. This rip is a very sort of high energy, upbeat feel. I would describe it as something like you would hear in the background of an old, like, 1970s, 80s VHS exercise routine video. There's not much else I can use to describe it other than that, other than it's, you know, kind of chaotic. And again, it's good for a SiIva rip to be chaotic, but just that and having it be contrasted with Big Time Rush, it does add to a lot of the silliness for the rip. Not much else I can say, but very enjoyable for how sudden this rip jumps out at you. Alrighty, now we are moving on to number 2. And at that spot is Nuclear JP version from Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. I have never finished that game. I really need to. It's such a good game, and yet I've just never, you know, gotten around to finishing it. That's my bad. Sorry about that. But the joke for this rip is Baka Mitai from Yakuza 5. Never played a Yakuza game. I've heard they're good. Of course, I don't have enough context to get all the memes, but that aside, this rip has very little editing. Like, this rip probably didn't take that long to make, and I'm not saying that is a bad thing. I'm saying it because it doesn't need all that editing. It is one of the most natural-sounding rips I have ever heard. You could definitely play this to someone who's never heard either song before. They would not bat an eye, I guarantee you. It fits that well. It's the feel of the song, the same tone for the two, you know, the sad, not dirge, but, you know, that melancholy sort of vibe to the song, and even the pace of each being slower pace. Just, it seems like a match made in heaven, honestly. It's harder to describe the exact feeling, but it's an almost perfect rip with how well it's put together, even though that didn't take a ton of effort. Like, I'm surprised that this rip didn't come out way sooner, all things considered. I mean, I don't know when Yakuza 5 dropped, but either way, it's extremely impressive for how much I enjoy the natural sort of flow of this rip. Okay, and if I had such glowing praise for the number 2 spot, what on God's green earth could possibly take number 1? Well, I'll tell ya, it's gonna be Comme Susur Told, I probably really butchered the pronunciation, from Neon Genesis Evangelion. But going into the rip itself, the joke is again H.H. Gregg's Christmas in July commercial. But this time, it just goes way further than that. Now, Comme Susur Told, or however it's pronounced, is already associated with a post-apocalyptic sort of vibe thanks to Evangelion, and this rip seeks to apply this sort of feeling, but to H.H. Gregg. Now, hear me out here. The vocal editing and pitch shifting to the melody of the original track is done excellently. It includes all this vocal harmony with H.H. Greg's vocals. Here, I'll play you a little clip of that. The icing on this cake is that this is actually a sequel rip. Now, this is a sequel to a previous Cruel Angel's Thesis rip that also had H.H. Gregg, but it's like, the opening of the anime, so the intro where it's all upbeat and happy H.H. Gregg, but now this is the contrast to that. This rip, instead, is really made clear as a sequel, where partway through the rip, near the end, it has a news clip audio playing, where it's this news clip about the entire company of H.H. Gregg going out of business and having their stores all closed, and they can't find a buyer, all of this. So it sets up, the sort of like, the world of H.H. Gregg is collapsing around him, that sort of feel. And that's only exacerbated by, right afterwards, they have someone record a monologue as HH, where it's assumedly parodying the one from Evangelion. IDK, I've never seen Evangelion, I don't really plan to. But this monologue here would have been very bone-chilling with all the things that he's ranting and raving about if it weren't a sentient cartoon advertisement paper roll-up thing, character, mascot, that is talking in his ad voice as he's doing this rant against the world. So it's this stupid contrast, but it's really hilarious to watch HH spiral into insanity in audio form. So anyways, and how can I forget the beautiful, beautiful artwork that was made for this rip? Like, look at this. If you don't know who's in the foreground, that's Blue Light from Kmart and Cheezosaurus Rex from Kraft, two other mascots that are, associated in YTPMVs and stuff with HH, but they're just like staring on in the foreground while HH just looms in the distance and rants about his stores closing. So this isn't a rip that I would, constantly listen to unironically, but it had such a stupid, amazing impact on me the first time I saw it, with how flabbergasted I was with the entire concept of this rip, that I had to put this in the #1 slot. So if you don't agree with me, hey, you can have your own opinion, but this is just something that I would consider peak for 2022. And there you have it. That's what makes Komsuser Told my favorite SiIvagunner rip of 2022. I guess 2022 was kind of the year of H.H. Gregg, now that I think about it. But hey, that's just how the cookie crumbles, or how the advertisement paper crumbles. Whatever. Let's just go to the wrap-up here. So, I am always looking for all sorts of new rips to add to my favorites playlist. Please submit yours on the channel Discord. The method to submit it does change depending on how we structure the server, so just pay attention to the server for updated ways to submit your rips. And aside from that, also make sure to keep a lookout for announcements for the next live streams, for the live reactions to the SiIvagunner content and the fan channels. You'll see the times and dates announced in the Discord. Again, I'm working towards a more structured schedule, depends on full-time job needs. You all know the drill. But I am looking forward to seeing you on the Discord server. So that's it for this video. I want to thank you all for watching. We have more top 10 videos coming down the pipeline later on, but in the meantime, please go ahead and give the video a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all on the next one. Peace!